The dust settled over the road like a shroud as Xavier Hayes stared at the empty grave marker, the pain in his chest as fresh as the day they'd lowered Sarah's coffin into the cold ground 3 years ago. Calico, California had been their dream, a place to build a ranch, raise children, grow old together. Now it was just a plot of land with memories that cut deeper than any knife. Xavier adjusted his worn Stetson and mounted his chestnut stallion, Thunder. The silver spurs jingled against the stirrups as he urged the horse away from the cemetery. At 32, he'd built the Hayes Ranch into one of the most respected in San Bernardino County. But the 4-bedroom house stood mostly empty, a hollow reminder of plans that would never come to pass. The year was 1878, and Calico was booming. The discovery of silver in the nearby mountains had transformed the once quiet settlement into a bustling mining town. New faces arrived daily, but Xavier kept to himself, speaking only when necessary and avoiding the saloon where lonely men sought comfort in whiskey and cards. "Mr. Hayes," called Samuel Jenkins, the general store owner, as Xavier rode past. "Got that fence wire you ordered?" "Want me to have it delivered to your place?" Xavier nodded curtly. "Obliged." The fewer words, the better. Words led to connections, and connections led to loss. He'd learned that lesson too well. As he made his way down Main Street, a commotion near the stagecoach stop caught his attention. A woman was arguing with the driver, her voice carrying across the dusty thoroughfare. "I paid for passage to Calico, sir, not to be abandoned 5 miles outside of town because your wheel broke. My belongings are still in the coach." Xavier didn't mean to stare, but something about her commanded attention. She stood tall despite her modest height, auburn hair escaping from beneath a practical bonnet. Her traveling dress was simple but well made, the blue fabric complementing her fair skin. The driver shrugged. "Miss, I got to fix the wheel. Your trunk's too heavy to carry. I'll bring it when I get the coach rolling again." "That could be hours. My medicines could spoil in this heat, and I need to establish my practice immediately." The word medicines caught Xavier's attention. A doctor, in Calico. Before he could stop himself, he had guided Thunder closer. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat, "I could transport your belongings to town if you'd like." She turned, and Xavier felt an unexpected jolt as her eyes met his eyes, the color of honey in sunlight. She assessed him quickly, intelligently. "That's very kind, Mr. Hayes, Xavier Hayes." "Olivia Langston," she replied with a small curtsy. "I would be most grateful for your assistance, Mr. Hayes. I'm the new doctor for Calico." Xavier blinked in surprise. A female doctor was unusual enough, but one as young and striking as Miss Langston was unexpected. She couldn't be more than 25. "A doctor?" he asked, unable to hide his skepticism. Her chin lifted slightly. "Yes, Mr. Hayes. I graduated from the Woman's Medical College of Pennsylvania. I assure you I am fully qualified." There was steel beneath her polite tone. Xavier found himself nodding. "No offense meant, Miss Langston. We're just not used to female physicians. I understand." Her smile was polite but determined. "I find that patients become accustomed to it rather quickly when they need medical attention." Xavier dismounted and approached the stagecoach. "Which trunk is yours?" Within minutes, he had secured her 2 trunks to Thunder, who snorted in protest at the additional weight. "He'll manage," Xavier assured her, offering his hand. "You can ride behind me to town." Olivia hesitated before placing her gloved hand in his. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." As he helped her onto Thunder's back, Xavier caught the scent of lavender. It had been so long since he'd been this close to a woman that he almost stumbled. Quickly recovering, he mounted in front of her. "You might want to hold on, Miss Langston." After a moment's hesitation, Olivia placed her hands lightly on his waist. Xavier nudged Thunder into motion, acutely aware of her presence behind him. "The town council arranged for me to use Dr. Miller's old office and residence," she explained as they rode. "Do you know where that is?" Xavier nodded. "At the east end of Main Street. Dr. Miller passed away 6 months ago. Heart trouble." "I'm sorry to hear that. Was he well liked?" "Well enough. Drank too much after his wife died. Hands weren't as steady as they should have been toward the end." Olivia was silent for a moment. "I understand loss can change a person." Something in her tone made Xavier glance over his shoulder. There was knowledge in her eyes, not just sympathy. He turned back to the road quickly. "Town's been without a proper doctor since. Barber's been pulling teeth and setting simple breaks. For anything serious, folks have to travel to San Bernardino." "Not anymore," Olivia said with quiet confidence. As they entered Calico, heads turned. A woman riding behind Xavier Hayes was news in itself, but word of the new female doctor had already spread. People stood in doorways and paused on the boardwalks to stare. Sheriff Colt Wilkinson approached as they reached Dr. Miller's old place. "This our new sawbones, Hayes, Doctor." "Olivia Langston," Xavier confirmed, helping her dismount. The sheriff eyed her dubiously. "Madam, no disrespect, but folks around here are used to a man doctor." "And I'm used to skepticism, Sheriff," Olivia replied pleasantly. "I hope to earn the town's trust through competence rather than gender." Xavier found himself almost smiling at her composure. Sheriff Wilkinson twisted his mustache thoughtfully. "Well, Mayor Thompson approved your contract, so I suppose we'll see. The place hasn't been cleaned out since Miller died. His daughter took his personal effects but left the medical supplies." "I appreciate the warning," Olivia said. "Mr. Hayes has kindly transported my trunks. Would you help bring them inside?" Between the three of them, they moved Olivia's belongings into the small building that would serve as both her home and medical practice. The front room was set up as an examination area, with a smaller room for procedures. The living quarters in back included a modest kitchen, bedroom, and sitting area. A thick layer of dust covered everything, and the medicinal smell was tinged with stale whiskey. "I can send the Widow Perkins to help clean," Sheriff Wilkinson offered. "Thank you, but I'll manage," Olivia said, already removing her gloves and bonnet. "I prefer to organize my own workspace." The sheriff nodded. "I'll let folks know you're open for business then." After he left, Xavier lingered awkwardly. "Is there anything else you need, Miss Langston?" She looked around the dusty office. "I believe I'm about to wage war on several months' worth of neglect, Mr. Hayes. Unless you're handy with a broom and dust cloth, I shouldn't keep you any longer." Xavier found himself saying, "I could fix that broken window shutter before I go, and check the stove to make sure it's drawing properly." Surprise flickered across her face. "That's very kind, thank you." For the next hour, Xavier repaired the shutter, cleared the chimney flue, and fixed a leaky pump in the kitchen while Olivia began cleaning the examination room. They worked in companionable silence, breaking it only when necessary. "May I ask why Calico?" Xavier finally inquired as he tightened the last screw on the shutter. Olivia paused in her dusting. "Small towns often have the greatest need for medical care, and I wanted—" She hesitated. "I wanted to build something of my own, somewhere new." Xavier nodded, understanding more than she realized. "And you, Mr. Hayes, are you a native of Calico?" "No, came from Texas 6 years ago with my wife, Sarah." The words tumbled out before he could stop them, and he immediately stiffened. Olivia seemed to sense his discomfort. "I see. Well, I'm grateful our paths crossed today. Not many would have stopped to help a stranded stranger." Xavier replaced his tools in his saddlebag. "I should get back to my ranch. Cattle won't feed themselves." "Of course." She walked him to the door. Thank you again, Mr. Hayes. Their eyes met briefly, and Xavier felt that same unexpected jolt. He tipped his hat and turned quickly to Thunder. "Mr. Hayes," she called as he mounted. He looked back. "If you ever need medical attention, you know where to find me." Something that might have been a smile touched his lips briefly. "Let's hope I don't, Miss Langston." As he rode away, Xavier couldn't help but glance back once. Olivia stood in the doorway, already rolling up her sleeves to continue her work. For the first time in 3 years, he found himself thinking about someone other than Sarah, and the realization both troubled and confused him. He dug his heels into Thunder's flanks, urging the horse to a gallop. The faster he put distance between himself and the new doctor, the better. The Hayes Ranch sprawled across 200 acres of good grazing land, 6 miles outside of Calico. The main house stood proud on a small rise, built with Sarah in mind, wide windows to let in light, a covered porch for warm evenings, rooms for children they never had. 2 ranch hands, Miguel Vasquez and Tobias Wilson, managed the daily operations alongside Xavier. As Thunder trotted into the yard, Miguel looked up from mending a saddle. "Boss, the north fence line's got a break. Looks like someone cut it deliberate-like." "Toby's out tracking to see if we lost any stock." Xavier's mood darkened. "Rustlers? Maybe. Or could be Simmons trying to cause trouble again." Wallace Simmons owned the neighboring ranch and had been pressuring Xavier to sell for the past year. The man was convinced the silver veins from the Calico Mountains extended under Hayes land. "I'll ride out and check," Xavier said, dismounting. "Any other problems?" "Nope, though Jenkins' boy came by with a message, said to tell you the doc's supplies arrived on today's stage." Xavier paused. "Dr. Langston's supplies," Miguel's eyebrows rose. "Dr. Langston, town got a new doc already." "Yes, she arrived today." Miguel grinned. "Well now, that's interesting." Xavier gave him a sharp look. "She's a professional woman doing her job. I happened to help her with her trunks when the stagecoach broke down." "Didn't say nothing, boss." Miguel's smile widened. "You volunteering that information all on your own?" Xavier turned away. "I'll check that fence line." As he rode across his property, Xavier couldn't keep his thoughts from straying to Olivia Langston. There was something about her that had penetrated the protective wall he'd built around himself, perhaps her competence, or the hint of her own past sorrows. But getting close to anyone meant risking loss again. Sarah's death had nearly destroyed him. 3 days of fever and she was gone. No doctor could save her. Xavier had held her hand as she slipped away, promising to love her forever, and he had kept that promise, hadn't he? These thoughts of another woman felt like betrayal. By the time Xavier returned to the ranch house, the sun was setting. He'd found the cut fence and repaired it temporarily, but had seen no sign of missing cattle or rustlers. After a solitary supper, he sat on the porch, watching darkness claim the land. He told himself he wouldn't ride into town tomorrow. There was no reason to check on Dr. Langston. She was clearly capable of managing on her own. But when morning came, Xavier found himself saddling Thunder early, telling Miguel he needed supplies. Calico was already bustling when Xavier arrived. He tied Thunder outside the general store and stepped inside, nodding to Jenkins. "Morning, Xavier. What can I get you? Coffee? Tobacco? Maybe some of those peppermint sticks." Jenkins raised an eyebrow, sweet tooth acting up. "Don't usually buy candy." Xavier ignored the comment. "Heard the doctor's supplies came in." "Yep. Jasper took them over last evening." Jenkins leaned on the counter. "Quite the stir she's causing. Half the men in town suddenly discovered ailments that need attention." He chuckled. "Though most changed their minds when they learned she charges the same as old Miller did." Xavier gathered his purchases. "The town's lucky to have a doctor at all. True enough. She patched up the Walker boy last night when he fell off the livery roof. Mrs. Walker says she's got a gentle touch and steady hands. Outside, Xavier hesitated. He should return to the ranch. Instead, he found himself walking toward the doctor's office. Through the window, he could see the transformation a day had made. The examination room was spotless. Instruments gleaming in neat rows on a clean cloth. Olivia was writing in a ledger at a small desk, her hair pulled back in a simple knot at the nape of her neck. She wore a practical dress of dove gray with a white collar. Just as Xavier was about to turn away, she looked up and saw him. Her surprised smile caught him off guard, and before he could retreat, she was at the door. "Mr. Hayes." "Good morning." "Morning, Miss Langston, Doctor." "Langston," he corrected himself. "Just passing by and thought I'd see if you needed anything." "That's very kind. I've managed quite well, thanks to your help yesterday. Would you like to come in for coffee? I just made a fresh pot." Every instinct told Xavier to decline, but he found himself nodding. That would be nice. Inside, the office smelled of soap and coffee rather than dust and whiskey. Olivia poured 2 cups and offered him a seat in the small consulting area. "The place looks different," he observed. "A little elbow grease works wonders." She sat across from him. "I had my first patients yesterday evening, a young boy with a broken arm and an elderly gentleman with gout." Xavier sipped his coffee. It was good strong but not bitter. "Jenkins said you made a good impression. Did he?" She seemed pleased. "I'm relieved. First impressions matter in a small town. How are your living quarters? Comfortable enough?" "Once I chased out a family of mice, yes." She laughed at his expression. "I grew up on a farm in Ohio, Mr. Hayes. Mice don't frighten me." They talked easily for a while, Xavier surprising himself by sharing stories about thunder and the challenges of ranching in the arid California climate. Olivia spoke of her medical training and the resistance she'd faced. "My father wanted me to marry the banker's son," she admitted. "When I insisted on medical school instead, he said I was throwing my life away." And now a shadow crossed her face. "He passed away while I was studying. We never reconciled." Xavier understood the regret in her voice all too well. "And your mother?" "Gone since I was 10. It was just father and me." The conversation paused as they recognized their shared understanding of loss. Xavier finished his coffee and stood. "I should let you get back to work." "Of course." Olivia walked him to the door. "Thank you for checking on me, Mr. Hayes. It's good to have a—" She hesitated. "A friend in town. Friend." The word hung between them, both an offer and a question. "If you need anything, the ranch is 6 miles west," Xavier said, then added more softly, "and you can call me Xavier." Her smile brightened. "Olivia." As he rode home, Xavier told himself he was just being neighborly to the new doctor. Nothing more. But even as he thought it, he knew he was lying to himself. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur for Olivia. Word of her competence spread quickly, and soon she was treating patients from dawn until dusk. Minor injuries from the mines, children's illnesses, a difficult birth that lasted through the night, all were handled with the skill and compassion that had driven her to become a doctor. Xavier didn't return to her office, but she saw him in town occasionally. He would tip his hat, exchange a few words, and continue on his way. Each brief encounter left Olivia with an odd mixture of pleasure and disappointment. There was something about the rancher that intrigued her. The sadness in his eyes spoke of deep wounds, yet the gentleness with which he had helped her that first day revealed his true nature. She found herself thinking of him at odd moments, wondering about the wife he had mentioned so briefly. On a particularly busy Tuesday, Sheriff Wilkinson burst into her office while she was treating a miner's infected hand. "Doc, there's been a shooting at the Silverado Saloon. 2 men down." Olivia immediately gathered her medical bag. How serious? Bad enough. One took a bullet to the shoulder, the other to the leg. They ain't dying, but they're making a racket about the pain. She followed the sheriff to the saloon, where two miners were sprawled on the floor, bleeding and cursing. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung in the air. What happened? Olivia asked, kneeling beside the first man. Disagreement over cards, the bartender said. These two fools drew on each other at the same time. Olivia worked quickly, cleaning and bandaging the wounds. The shoulder injury was relatively clean. The bullet had passed through muscle without hitting bone. The leg wound was more complex, with the bullet lodged against the femur. I need to operate, she told the second man. The bullet must come out before infection sets in. No woman's cutting on me. The miner protested. Fine. Gangrene is a pleasant way to die, I hear, Olivia replied coolly. Sheriff, can you find someone to help carry this gentleman to my surgery? He'll need chloroform for the procedure. To her surprise, Xavier Hayes stepped forward from the crowd that had gathered. I'll help, he said, meeting her eyes briefly. With Xavier and the sheriff's assistance, both injured men were transported to her office. Olivia prepared for surgery while Xavier built up the fire in the stove to boil water for sterilization. You don't have to stay, she told him as she laid out her instruments. You have someone else to assist, Olivia hesitated. No, but then I'll stay. His presence was oddly comforting as she administered chloroform to the reluctant miner. When he was unconscious, Olivia began the delicate process of extracting the bullet. Xavier watched with undisguised admiration as her hands moved with sure, practiced movements. She spoke quietly, explaining what she was doing. The bullet missed the artery, thankfully. It's lodged against the bone here, see? I need to ease it out without causing further damage. With a small pair of forceps, she extracted the misshapen lead ball and dropped it into a basin with a metallic ping. Now I'll clean the wound thoroughly and close it. She glanced up at Xavier. You're not squeamish, I see. I've doctored enough cattle to know the basics, he replied, though your stitches are neater than mine. Years of practice. My instructors were particularly demanding about suturing technique. She tied off the last stitch and began bandaging the wound. He'll need to stay off this leg for at least 2 weeks. Think he'll listen? Probably not, but I'll be very clear about the consequences. She straightened up, suddenly aware of how close Xavier was standing. Thank you for your help. He nodded, his eyes lingering on her face longer than necessary. You're good at what you do, Olivia. The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her. Thank you, Xavier. After the patients were settled, the shoulder wound sent home with his wife, the leg wound installed in Dr. Miller's old recovery room. Xavier helped Olivia clean the surgery. Can I walk you to dinner? He asked as they finished. You must be hungry after all that. The invitation surprised her. Yes, that would be lovely. They ate at the hotel restaurant, where curious eyes followed their progress to a corner table. Xavier seemed oblivious to the attention, but Olivia noted the raised eyebrows and whispers. We're causing a stir, she murmured. Xavier looked around, noticing the stairs for the first time. Small towns. Everyone knows everyone's business. And what business do they think this is? Olivia asked, more boldly than she intended. His eyes met hers, serious and intense. They're wondering why Xavier Hayes, who hasn't shared a meal with anyone but his ranch hands in 3 years, is dining with the new doctor. Olivia's heart quickened. And what would you tell them if they asked? That I admire your skill. He paused, then added quietly, and your company. The simple statement felt significant, as if he had shared a profound secret. Olivia found herself smiling. I enjoy your company too, Xavier. They talked through dinner, finding common ground in books they had read and places they had seen. Xavier described Texas, where he had grown up, and Olivia spoke of Philadelphia, where she had studied medicine. "What brought you to Calico?" she asked eventually. "You mentioned coming with your wife, but not why." A shadow crossed his face, but he answered. "Sarah had tuberculosis. The dry air was supposed to help her lungs. We'd been married 2 years when she was diagnosed." "I'm sorry, Xavier. Did it help?" He shook his head. "For a while, we had almost 3 good years here. Built the ranch, made plans. Then a fever took her. 3 days and she was gone." His voice grew rough. No doctor could help, not even Dr. Miller, though he tried. Olivia reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "Sometimes medicine fails us, despite our best efforts." Xavier looked down at her hand on his, then slowly turned his palm up to clasp her fingers. "She made me promise to be happy again someday. I haven't kept that promise very well." The raw honesty in his voice moved Olivia deeply. "Grief has its own timeline," she said softly. "You can't force healing." "No," he agreed, "but maybe you can recognize when it's beginning." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Olivia felt a tingle of possibility that both excited and frightened her. When Xavier walked her back to her office, they lingered at the door. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "Thank you for the company." He hesitated, then asked, "Would you like to see the ranch sometime? Sunday, perhaps? I could bring the buggy for you." The invitation made Olivia's heart skip. "I'd like that very much." After Xavier left, Olivia checked on her patient, finding him sleeping soundly. Then she sat at her desk, trying to organize her thoughts. She had come to Calico seeking independence and purpose, not romance. Yet there was something about Xavier Hayes that called to her: his quiet strength, his hidden gentleness, the sorrow he carried that matched her own in ways he couldn't know. Her father's death had left more than grief. It had left regrets that could never be resolved. Their final argument about her career echoed in her memory, harsh words that could never be taken back. And then there was Thomas, her fiancé, who had abandoned her when she chose medicine over marriage. "Your ambitions make you less of a woman," he had told her cruelly. "No man wants a wife who thinks herself his equal." Xavier seemed different. He had watched her perform surgery with respect, not disgust. He valued her skills, her intelligence, but was she ready to trust again? And was Xavier truly ready to move beyond his grief? Sunday came bright and clear. Olivia closed her practice for the day, her first full day off since arriving in Calico, and changed into her best day dress, a soft blue cotton with white trim. She pinned her hair loosely at the nape of her neck, allowing a few curls to frame her face. Xavier arrived promptly at 10, driving a well-maintained buggy pulled by a handsome bay gelding. He had shaved carefully and wore a clean shirt under his vest. When he saw Olivia, his eyes warmed appreciatively. "You look lovely," he said as he helped her into the buggy. "Thank you." "You look quite handsome yourself." She settled her skirts as he took the seat beside her. The drive to the ranch was pleasant, the spring air filled with the scent of wildflowers. Xavier pointed out landmarks along the way: the creek that ran through his property, the hills where his cattle grazed, the distant mountains rich with silver ore. "Wallace Simmons is convinced there's silver under my grazing land," he explained. "He's been trying to buy me out for months." "Would you sell?" Olivia asked. Xavier shook his head. "This was Sarah's dream as much as mine. I couldn't let it go." As they crested a small hill, the Hayes ranch came into view. The whitewashed house stood proudly against the backdrop of rolling pastures. A barn, corral, and bunkhouse completed the tidy compound. "It's beautiful," Olivia said sincerely. Xavier's expression softened with pride. "Sarah designed the house, said a home should have character." He helped her down from the buggy and introduced her to his ranch hands, Miguel and Tobias, who tipped their hats respectfully. "Pleased to meet you, Doctor," Miguel said with a wide smile. "Boss hasn't brought a visitor in a long while." Xavier shot him a warning look, which Miguel cheerfully ignored. "We'll be having dinner with us, Miguel," Xavier said. "Around 2. "Yes, sir. Mrs. Vasquez is already cooking up a storm. She's been excited since you told us the doctor was coming." After the men returned to their work, Xavier showed Olivia around the property. The house was larger than she expected, with a spacious parlor, dining room, and kitchen downstairs, and what appeared to be several bedrooms upstairs. Though clean and well-maintained, it had a certain emptiness to it, as if waiting for the family it was built to shelter. "You must rattle around in here all by yourself," Olivia observed. "I mostly use the kitchen and one bedroom," Xavier admitted. "The rest," he gestured vaguely, "seemed a waste to fill it with furniture for just me." In the kitchen, they found Maria Vasquez, Miguel's wife, kneading bread dough. She wiped her hands on her apron and greeted Olivia warmly. "Doctor, it is good to meet you. Miguel says you saved Tomas Walker's arm after he fell." "It was a clean break," Olivia replied modestly. "Children heal quickly. Still, we are blessed to have a doctor again." She gestured to the dough. "I am making fresh bread for our meal and a special apple pie for dessert." "It smells wonderful," Olivia said. "May I help with anything?" Maria looked surprised but pleased. "You can cut vegetables for the stew if you like." Xavier raised an eyebrow. "You cook, Doctor?" Olivia laughed at his surprise. "I lived alone through medical school, Xavier. It was either learn to cook or starve." For the next hour, Olivia helped Maria prepare the meal while Xavier tended to some ranch business. The two women talked easily, Maria sharing stories of her 5 children, now grown and with families of their own in nearby towns. "The boss, he needs family," Maria said quietly when they were alone. "Too long by himself with his sadness." Olivia stirred the stew thoughtfully. "Grief takes time. 3 years is much time, no, and the way he looks at you." Maria smiled knowingly. "I have not seen that look since Mrs. Sarah was alive." Before Olivia could respond, Xavier returned with Miguel and Tobias. The conversation turned to ranch matters: the new calves, the repaired fences, plans for the summer grazing. They ate at the large kitchen table, the food simple but delicious. Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in years, especially at Miguel's animated stories about ranch mishaps. And then the boss, he falls right into the mud puddle, hat and all, while that ornery bull just stands there looking proud of himself. Miguel concluded one tale, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. Xavier shook his head, but he was smiling. Miguel neglects to mention that he was supposed to be watching that bull. After the meal, Xavier took Olivia to see his pride enjoy the herd of cattle grazing on the western pastures. They rode double on Thunder, Xavier's arms around her as he held the reins. The physical closeness made Olivia's heart beat faster, though she tried to focus on the landscape. "They're Herefords," Xavier explained as they watched the red and white cattle. "Better suited to this climate than most breeds. I started with just 20 head. Now I have over 200. "Impressive," Olivia said. "You've built something remarkable here, Xavier." He was quiet for a moment. "It was supposed to be for our children," he finally said. "Sarah wanted a big family." Olivia leaned back slightly, her shoulders against his chest. "She would be proud of what you've accomplished, maybe." His arms tightened almost imperceptibly around her. "But lately I've been thinking she'd want more from me than just keeping the ranch going." "She'd want." He didn't finish the thought, but Olivia felt the implication in his embrace, in the way his breath stirred her hair. They rode back to the house in comfortable silence. As the afternoon waned, Xavier suggested they sit on the porch to watch the sunset. He brought out a bottle of good whiskey and 2 glasses. "I don't normally indulge," Olivia said as he poured a small amount for her, "but a sip won't hurt." They sat side by side on the porch swing, watching as the sun painted the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Thank you for today," Olivia said after a while. "It's been wonderful." Xavier turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the sunset. "I've enjoyed having you here more than I expected to." "What did you expect?" she asked softly. He considered the question. "To be uncomfortable. To feel guilty. To wish I hadn't invited you." His honesty was disarming. "Instead, I've been thinking how natural it feels to have you here, how much I'd like you to come back." Olivia's heart quickened. "I'd like that too." Xavier set his glass aside and took hers, placing it next to his on the small table. Then he turned to face her fully. "Olivia, I haven't felt anything for anyone since Sarah died. I didn't want to, didn't think I could." His voice was low, intense. "But since you arrived in Calico, something's changed. I find myself thinking about you, wanting to see you." Olivia found it hard to breathe. "Xavier, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that I care, that I'm starting to hope again." Impulsively, Olivia reached out and touched his cheek. "I care too, Xavier, more than I should, perhaps." His hand came up to cover hers. "Why shouldn't you?" "Because I came here to be independent, to prove myself as a doctor. Not to," she broke off, uncertain how to continue. "Not to fall for a broken-down rancher." There was a hint of a smile in his voice. "You're hardly broken down," she protested. "And it's not that, it's just, I've been hurt before. I was engaged in Philadelphia." Xavier's expression sobered. "What happened?" Olivia looked down. "Thomas wanted a traditional wife. When I insisted on continuing my medical career after marriage, he ended our engagement. Said no real man would want a wife who put medicine before family." Xavier's jaw tightened. "He was a fool, perhaps, but it made me wary. And then my father died while we were still estranged over my career choices." She swallowed hard. "I came to Calico for a fresh start, to be defined by my work, not my relationships." "I understand," Xavier said quietly. "Better than you might think. After Sarah died, I defined myself by my grief. By what I'd lost. It became my identity." He took her hand in his touch gentle but sure. "But maybe we're both more than those old definitions. Maybe we deserve the chance to find out." The tenderness in his voice broke something open in Olivia's heart. When Xavier leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, she met him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, hesitant, two people remembering how to trust, how to feel. When they parted, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "I'm not rushing this," he whispered. "We have time." Olivia nodded, too moved to speak. They sat together as darkness fell, talking quietly about their pasts, their hopes, their fears. By the time Xavier drove her back to town under a canopy of stars, something profound had shifted between them. At her door, he kissed her once more, lingering but still restrained. "When can I see you again?" he asked. "I make house calls on Wednesdays," she replied with a smile. "The Hayes ranch might need a visit." His answering smile lit his eyes. "I'll find some medical reason." Olivia watched him drive away, her heart fuller than it had been in years. She was falling in love with Xavier Hayes, and the realization was both thrilling and frightening. But for tonight, she would simply savor the memory of his kiss, of his arms around her, of the way he looked at her as if she were precious. The weeks that followed settled into a pattern. Xavier found reasons to come to town several times a week, often bringing fresh vegetables from Maria's garden or game he had hunted. Olivia made her promised house call to the ranch, ostensibly to check Miguel's arthritic knee, but staying for dinner and conversation that stretched late into the evening. They were discreet, but in a town like Calico, their growing relationship didn't go unnoticed. Olivia was aware of the speculation, the whispers that followed her. Most were benign. The townspeople seemed genuinely happy that Xavier was emerging from his shell. A few voices were less kind, particularly those of young women who had set their caps for the handsome widower without success. One afternoon in late May, Olivia was organizing her medical supplies when Wallace Simmons stormed into her office. The rancher was a large man with a florid face and expensive clothes that strained against his bulk. "So you're the woman who's got Hayes wrapped around her finger," he said without preamble. Olivia straightened, maintaining her professional demeanor. "Mr. Simmons, I presume. What can I do for you medically today?" he snorted. "Nothing wrong with me that talking sense into Hayes wouldn't cure. Tell him to sell me that worthless ranch. I don't discuss my personal relationships during office hours, Mr. Simmons, nor do I involve myself in business matters that don't concern me." Simmons stepped closer, his bulk intimidating in the small office. "Listen here, doctor. That land has silver under it. I know it. Hayes is too sentimental to see it's worth more as a mine than a cow pasture." "That's for Mr. Hayes to decide," Olivia replied coolly. "Now, if you're not here for medical attention, I have work to do." The rancher's face darkened. "You think you're too good for the likes of me, don't you, with your fancy education and city ways?" He jabbed a finger toward her. "You should know Hayes isn't the marrying kind anymore. He's just using you for company until he gets tired of playing doctor." Before Olivia could respond, the door opened and Sheriff Wilkinson walked in. "Problem here, Doc?" he asked, eyeing Simmons suspiciously. "Mr. Simmons was just leaving," Olivia said firmly. The larger man glared but backed away. "Think about what I said, Doctor. Hayes Ranch is sitting on a fortune, and I mean to have it." After he left, the sheriff shook his head. "Simmons giving you trouble? Nothing I can't handle." Olivia busied herself with her supplies. "Did you need something, Sheriff?" "Just the usual liniment for my shoulder. Acts up when the weather's changing." As she prepared his medication, the sheriff cleared his throat. "Folks are talking about you and Hayes, Doc." Olivia's hand stilled briefly. "I'm aware. Most think it's a good thing. Hayes has been alone too long." He accepted the small jar she handed him. "Just watch yourself with Simmons. He's used to getting what he wants one way or another." "Thank you for the warning." After the sheriff left, Olivia sat at her desk, troubled by Simmons' visit. She didn't care about silver or land disputes, but the man's threatening manner concerned her. More than that, his words about Xavier not being the marrying kind had struck a nerve. They hadn't discussed the future in concrete terms. Their relationship was still new, still unfolding. But Olivia found herself wondering where it was leading and whether Xavier was truly ready to love again. That evening, Xavier arrived with a bouquet of wildflowers he had gathered on the way to town. His smile faded when he saw Olivia's expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting the flowers on her desk. She told him about Simmons' visit, watching his face darken with anger. "He had no right to come here," Xavier said tightly, "to threaten you." "He didn't explicitly threaten me," Olivia clarified. "But he made it clear he wants your land, Xavier." "Why is he so certain there's silver there?" Xavier sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There was a survey done last year. Some geologist Simmons hired found traces of silver in the creek that runs through my property. It might be nothing, might be a significant vein. I don't care either way." "Because it was Sarah's dream," Olivia said softly. "Yes. And because I'm a rancher, not a miner, I've built something there." He took her hands in his. "I won't let Simmons bully me into selling, and I certainly won't let him intimidate you." Olivia squeezed his hands. "I'm not easily intimidated, but there was something else he said." She hesitated, then continued. He said you weren't the marrying kind anymore. Xavier stilled, his eyes searching hers. And that bothered you. I don't know what we're doing, Xavier, she admitted. Where this is going, I care for you deeply, but if you're not looking for something lasting. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing each one gently. Olivia, I don't know exactly what the future holds for us. I'm still finding my way back to living fully, but I do know that what I feel for you is real, is growing stronger each day. Is that enough? She whispered. For now. Yes. His gaze was steady. I'm not playing games, Olivia. I wouldn't risk your heart that way. She nodded, accepting his answer even as a part of her yearned for more certainty. I should get these flowers in water, she said, managing a smile. As she arranged the wildflowers in a jar, Xavier watched her thoughtfully. Come to dinner at the ranch tomorrow. Maria's making her special enchiladas. I'd like that. Their evening ended with a lingering kiss that promised more, but Xavier, true to his word, didn't push for more than Olivia was ready to give. As she prepared for bed that night, Olivia admitted to herself that she was falling deeply in love with Xavier Hayes. The question was whether he could fully love again after such devastating loss. The next evening, Xavier picked Olivia up in the buggy as planned. She wore a pretty green dress that complemented her auburn hair, which she had pinned up more elaborately than usual. You look beautiful, Xavier said, helping her into the buggy. He seemed unusually nervous, fidgeting with the reins. Is everything all right? Olivia asked as they drove out of town. Just fine, he replied, a bit too quickly. Looking forward to dinner. But as they approached the ranch, Olivia noticed smoke rising from beyond the main house, a lot of smoke. Xavier saw it too and flicked the reins, urging the horse to a faster pace. They crested the rise to a horrifying sight. The barn was engulfed in flames, orange tongues licking at the wooden structure as black smoke billowed into the evening sky. Miguel and Tobias were frantically working a pump, trying to contain the blaze. Xavier leaped from the buggy before it had fully stopped. Maria, he shouted. Is anyone inside? Maria emerged from the house, her face streaked with soot. No, thank God. The animals are safe. Miguel got them out, but the barn, it was clearly a lost cause. Even as they watched, a section of the roof collapsed with a shower of sparks. Xavier organized a bucket brigade to prevent the fire from spreading to the house or nearby outbuildings, while Olivia tended to Tobias, who had suffered minor burns on his arms. What happened? Xavier demanded once the fire had burned down enough that the house was no longer in danger. Don't know, boss, Miguel said, wiping sweat from his brow. I was checking the horses when I smelled smoke. By the time I found where it was coming from, the back wall was already burning. Could it have been an accident? Olivia asked. A lantern knocked over, perhaps. Miguel shook his head. No lanterns lit this time of day, and I found this. He held up a charred whiskey bottle with a rag stuffed in the neck. Someone threw it through the window. I think they meant it to hit the house, but missed. Xavier's expression turned to stone. Simmons. You can't know that for certain, Olivia said, though she had the same suspicion. Who else would do this? Xavier paced, his hands clenched into fists. He threatened you yesterday, and now this. It's too much of a coincidence. We should notify the sheriff, Olivia suggested. Let him investigate. Xavier nodded grimly. Tobias, ride to town and bring Sheriff Wilkinson. Tell him what happened. As Tobias left, Maria insisted they all come inside for coffee and food. The planned dinner was forgotten in the chaos, but she quickly prepared sandwiches while Xavier, Miguel, and Olivia cleaned up as best they could. I'm sorry about your barn, Olivia said quietly to Xavier when they had a moment alone. He stared out the window at the smoldering ruins. I can rebuild it. I'm just grateful no one was seriously hurt." He turned to her, his expression softening. "And that you're safe. If that firebomb had hit the house while we were inside." Olivia shuddered at the thought. "Do you really think Simmons would go this far? Arson is a serious crime. He's desperate for that silver, and he's used to getting his way." Xavier's jaw tightened. "But if he thinks this will scare me into selling, he's badly mistaken." Sheriff Wilkinson arrived an hour later with 2 deputies. He examined the evidence and questioned everyone present. "I'll have a talk with Simmons," he promised Xavier, "though proving it was him won't be easy without witnesses." "I know it was him," Xavier insisted. "Who else has been threatening me to sell?" the sheriff sighed. "Knowing something and proving it are different matters, Hayes." "I'll do what I can." After the sheriff left, Xavier insisted on driving Olivia back to town despite her offer to stay and help. "It's not safe here right now," he told her. "If Simmons is bold enough to burn my barn, I don't want you anywhere near when he tries again." "You think he will?" "Men like that don't give up easily." Xavier helped her into the buggy. "I'm going to post guards tonight. Miguel and I will take turns watching." The ride back to Calico was tense, both of them lost in troubled thoughts. When they reached her office, Xavier walked Olivia to the door. "I'm sorry about tonight," he said. "This wasn't how I planned it." "You have nothing to apologize for." She touched his cheek gently. "Just be careful, Xavier. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you." He caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. "I'll be fine. But I want you to be cautious, too. If Simmons is targeting me, he might try to get to you as well." "I can take care of myself," she assured him, "but I'll be vigilant." Xavier hesitated, then pulled her close in a fierce embrace. "Olivia, I—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say. "What is it?" she asked, looking up at him. Instead of answering, he kissed her deeply, pouring all his unspoken feelings into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "I'll come see you tomorrow," he promised. "Lock your door tonight." After Xavier left, Olivia did as he suggested, securing both the front and back doors of her office. As she prepared for bed, she couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Simmons seemed dangerous, and she feared what he might do next in his quest for Xavier's land. Her fears proved justified the very next morning. She was preparing her examination room for the day's patients when urgent knocking rattled her front door. Opening it, she found Miguel's wife, Maria, her face pale with worry. "Doctor, you must come quickly. It's the boss, he's been shot." Olivia's heart nearly stopped. "Shot? How badly?" "In the side. Miguel says he's losing blood." Maria wrung her hands. "They're bringing him to town now." Olivia immediately began preparing for surgery, her hands steady despite her inner panic. "What happened, Maria?" "Simmons and his men came at dawn. Said they wanted to talk about buying the ranch. When Xavier refused again, one of Simmons' men drew on him. Miguel says Xavier wasn't even wearing his gun." Before Olivia could respond, the door burst open. Miguel and Tobias carried Xavier between them, his shirt soaked with blood. His face was ashen, eyes closed. "Get him on the table," Olivia ordered, professional training taking over. "Maria, boil water. Miguel, tell me exactly where he was hit." "Left side, below the ribs," Miguel said as they transferred Xavier to the examination table. "Bullet went clean through, I think." Olivia cut away Xavier's bloodied shirt to reveal the wound. The entry point was indeed on his left side with an exit wound in his back. Both were bleeding heavily. "He's lucky," she said, examining the injury. "The bullet missed any vital organs, but he's lost a lot of blood." For the next hour, Olivia worked frantically to clean the wound, stop the bleeding, and stitch both entry and exit points. Xavier remained unconscious throughout, which was a blessing given the lack of proper anesthesia for the procedure. When she had finished, she sat beside him, monitoring his pulse and breathing. Miguel had gone to notify the sheriff, while Maria and Tobias waited anxiously outside. "Don't you dare die on me, Xavier Hayes," Olivia whispered, holding his hand. "Not now. Not when I've just found you." His fingers twitched slightly in hers, but he didn't wake. Olivia knew the next 24 hours would be critical, if infection set in or if the blood loss had been too severe. She refused to complete the thought. Instead, she focused on making Xavier as comfortable as possible, applying cool cloths to his forehead when fever began to rise, changing the bandages regularly to prevent infection. Sheriff Wilkinson arrived in the afternoon, grim-faced after speaking with Miguel. "I've arrested Simmons," he told Olivia. His foreman confessed that Simmons ordered them to put the fear of God into Hayes this morning. Claims the shooting wasn't part of the plan but happened when Hayes refused to back down. "Will the charges stick?" Olivia asked, not looking up from her patient. "Attempted murder, conspiracy, arson. He'll hang if Hayes dies." The sheriff's voice was somber. "How is he?" "Holding his own for now." She finally met the sheriff's eyes. "I'm doing everything I can." "I know you are, Doc." He glanced at Xavier's pale face. "He's a fighter, always has been." After the sheriff left, Olivia continued her vigil. She sent Maria back to the ranch to rest, promising to send word of any change in Xavier's condition. As darkness fell, Olivia canceled her appointments for the next day and prepared for a long night. Around midnight, Xavier's fever spiked dangerously. Olivia bathed his face and chest with cool water, her medical knowledge warring with fear as his breathing grew labored. "Stay with me," she pleaded, applying another cold compress to his forehead. "Xavier, please, stay with me." In the quiet of the night, with only the ticking of the clock and Xavier's ragged breathing for company, Olivia finally admitted the depth of her feelings. "I love you," she whispered, her throat tight with unshed tears. "I know it's too soon, and maybe you're not ready to hear it, but I do. I love you, Xavier Hayes. So you have to live, do you understand? You have to live so I can tell you properly." As if in response, Xavier's breathing seemed to ease slightly. Encouraged, Olivia continued talking, telling him about her hopes for the future, her dreams of a life that now included him. She spoke of her father's rejection and Thomas's betrayal, of how Xavier had shown her that love could be accepting rather than limiting. "Your heart is safe in my hands," she promised, pressing her lips to his knuckles. "I won't let you down." Sometime in the early hours of the morning, exhaustion claimed her, and Olivia fell asleep with her head resting on the edge of Xavier's bed, her hand still clasping his. She awoke to the sensation of fingers gently stroking her hair. Opening her eyes, she found Xavier watching her, his gaze weak but conscious. "You're awake," she straightened quickly, immediately checking his pulse and temperature. The fever had broken and his heartbeat was stronger. "How long?" His voice was raspy from disuse. "Almost 24 hours." She offered him water, supporting his head as he drank. "You were shot, do you remember?" Xavier nodded slightly. "Simmons. His man drew when I told them to leave. The sheriff has arrested them both. You're safe now." She smoothed the hair from his forehead, unable to stop touching him, reassuring herself that he was truly recovering. "You saved me," he murmured, capturing her hand in his. "You did most of the work yourself." She smiled, blinking back tears of relief. "You're quite stubborn, Mr. Hayes." Had something to live for. His eyes, though tired, held hers intently. "Someone." Olivia's heart swelled. "Rest now, we can talk when you're stronger." But Xavier tightened his grip on her hand. "Heard you last night." Heat flooded Olivia's cheeks. Had he been conscious during her heartfelt confessions? "You were very ill with fever. I was just encouraging you to recover." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Said you loved me. There was no point denying it. Yes. Good. His eyes were already closing again, exhaustion claiming him. Because I love you too, Olivia Langston. The simple declaration, spoken in a voice weak from pain yet utterly sincere, undid her completely. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks as she bent to press a gentle kiss to Xavier's forehead. Sleep now, she whispered. I'll be here when you wake. The next few days were a careful balance of tending to Xavier's wound, managing his pain, and ensuring he rested enough to heal properly. Word of the shooting and Simmons' arrest had spread quickly through Calico, and many townspeople stopped by to inquire about Xavier's condition or drop off food and well wishes. Maria came daily, bringing fresh clothes and home-cooked meals that tempted Xavier's returning appetite. Miguel reported that the ranch was secure, with several neighboring ranchers volunteering to help watch over the property and begin rebuilding the barn. Towns rallied behind you, boss, Miguel told Xavier on the fourth day, when Xavier was sitting up and taking solid food again. Even old man Jenkins is talking about organizing a barn raising once you're back on your feet. Xavier's recovery progressed steadily under Olivia's attentive care. By the end of the week, he was strong enough to move from the examination table to the small bed in Olivia's spare room, where she could monitor him while still seeing her other patients. They didn't speak again of the declarations exchanged during that first night. It wasn't avoidance so much as a mutual understanding that such important conversations deserved his full strength and attention. But there was a new intimacy between them, a certainty in their touches, a depth in their gazes that spoke volumes. One evening, as Olivia changed Xavier's bandages, he caught her hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "Not just for this," he gestured to his healing wound, "but for everything. For bringing me back to life even before Simmons tried to end it." Olivia's eyes softened. "You were never as dead as you thought you were, Xavier. The heart that could build this ranch, that inspires such loyalty from people like Miguel and Maria. That heart was always alive, just waiting. For you," he finished, "though I didn't know it." She sat beside him on the edge of the bed. "And what now, when you're fully recovered?" Xavier entwined his fingers with hers. "Now we build something together, if that's what you want." "What about Sarah?" Olivia asked gently. "The promise you made to her memory. Sarah wanted me to be happy again." His voice was steady, certain. "With you, I am. I'll always love her, Olivia. She was my first love, the woman who shared my youth and helped me become the man I am. But loving her doesn't mean I can't love you just as deeply, just as completely." Olivia's heart filled with understanding. "I wouldn't want you to forget her." "Never." He brought her hand to his chest, placing it over his heart. "But there's room here for both that love and this new one, if you're willing to take the risk with a man who's been afraid to love for too long." "Your heart is safe in my hands," Olivia promised, echoing the words she'd spoken during his fever. "I won't let fear keep us apart." Xavier pulled her closer, kissing her with all the passion his recovering body could muster. When they parted, both were breathless. "I think we should get married," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Not right away, I want to court you properly first, but soon. I don't want to waste any more time being afraid of losing what I haven't fully embraced." Joy bloomed in Olivia's chest. "Are you proposing to me, Xavier Hayes?" Inelegantly, perhaps. He smiled, the full, unguarded smile that she had come to treasure. "But sincerely. I love you, Olivia Langston. Will you marry me? Be my wife, my partner. Share the ranch and whatever life brings us." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." Their courtship unfolded over the summer months as Xavier regained his strength. True to his word, the sheriff prosecuted Wallace Simmons for attempted murder and arson. Though the wealthy rancher's lawyers managed to reduce the charges, Simmons was sentenced to 10 years in prison, effectively ending his campaign to acquire the Hayes Ranch. The town of Calico embraced their relationship with enthusiasm. The barn raising Jenkins had promised materialized in July, with nearly every able-bodied man in the county turning out to help rebuild what had been destroyed. The women brought food and drink, turning the work into a festive occasion. By sunset, a new barn stood on the Hayes property, larger and sturdier than the original. As Olivia and Xavier sat on the porch that evening, watching the last of the volunteers depart, Xavier took her hand. "I've been thinking," he said, "about the silver Simmons was so convinced is under our land." "What about it?" Olivia asked. "If it's there, it doesn't change anything for me. This is cattle country, not mining ground, but the money from a small mining operation could fund an extension to your clinic. Calico's growing. You need more space, especially if you're going to train that young woman who's been asking to apprentice with you." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "You do that. Allow mining on your land, our land, soon enough," he corrected gently. "And yes, for the right purpose. A proper hospital for Calico would be a fitting legacy. For both of us." The wedding took place in October, when the desert heat had given way to pleasant autumn temperatures. The entire town turned out for the celebration, held on the Hayes Ranch beneath an arbor Miguel had constructed specially for the occasion. Olivia wore a gown of ivory satin, her auburn hair crowned with a wreath of late-blooming wildflowers. Xavier, handsome in a new black suit, waited for her at the altar with an expression of such joy and love that it brought tears to the eyes of even the most stoic ranchers present. Sheriff Wilkinson gave the bride away, and Maria's oldest daughter served as maid of honor. Miguel stood proudly as Xavier's best man, beaming as the couple exchanged vows and rings. "I, Xavier, take you, Olivia, to be my wife." Xavier's voice rang clear across the gathered assembly. "To share in life's joys and sorrows, to support your dreams as you have supported mine, to love you completely until my dying day." Olivia's voice trembled slightly with emotion as she repeated similar vows, adding, "I promise to hold your heart safely in my hands, to treasure the trust you have placed in me, to build our future with courage and hope." As Xavier kissed his bride, a cheer went up from the assembled guests. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed half the county. When the last guests had departed or settled into the temporary accommodations arranged around the property, Xavier carried Olivia across the threshold of the house that would now truly be their home. In their bedroom, freshly painted and furnished for their new life together, Xavier held Olivia close. "Happy?" he asked, searching her eyes. "Completely," she assured him, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. "Are you?" Xavier smiled, the shadows that had once haunted his gaze now replaced by peaceful contentment. "More than I ever thought possible again." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, both knew that the path ahead might hold challenges, but they would face them together, two healing hearts that had found in each other not just love, but home. Spring came early to Calico the following year. The mountains bloomed with wildflowers, and the Hayes Ranch thrived under the joint stewardship of Xavier and Olivia. True to their plan, a small silver mining operation had been established on the far corner of their property, with the proceeds funding an expansion of the medical clinic in town. Olivia divided her time between her practice and the ranch, finding a balance that allowed her to maintain her professional identity while embracing her role as Xavier's wife. For his part, Xavier took obvious pride in his wife's accomplishments, often bringing potential investors to tour the new hospital wing under construction. One evening in April, as they sat together on their porch watching the sunset, Olivia took Xavier's hand and placed it gently over her abdomen. "I confirmed it today," she said softly. "We're going to have a baby." Xavier's expression transformed from surprise to wonder to unbridled joy. "A baby, you're certain as medical training allows." She smiled at his amazement. "The child should arrive around Thanksgiving." Xavier pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of the most precious glass. "A baby," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." As they sat together planning for this new chapter in their lives, both reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Xavier, once afraid to love after devastating loss, had found the courage to open his heart again. Olivia, determined to be defined by her profession rather than relationships, had discovered that love could enhance rather than diminish her independence. Together, they had built something neither could have created alone, a partnership founded on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the promise that no matter what challenges life might bring, their hearts were safe in each other's hands. In the years that followed, the Hayes family grew to include 3 children, 2 boys, and a girl who filled the once empty house with laughter and life. Xavier proved to be a devoted father, teaching his children to ride and respect the land, while Olivia instilled in them her passion for healing and service. The Hayes Hospital became a respected institution in San Bernardino County, drawing patients and medical students from across the state. Xavier expanded the ranch to include one of the finest breeding programs for Hereford cattle in California. And every year on their anniversary, they would sit together on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant colors, marveling at how fear had given way to love, and how love had built a legacy neither could have imagined alone.